Welcome to Mick and the Psychic, where we leave no stone unturned as we explore all things outside the apparent physical realm.
There is no intent to teach or make you believe or disbelieve anything. It is just a safe space to listen and explore with us.
So for this next episode, you have permission to open your heart and mind as you join myself and Xavier on this deep dive into the unknown.
She wasn't moving forward in her job. She wasn't moving forward in social life. All she did was sit at home with her cat. And the cup turned and the word M-O-V-E was spelled out in it. Needed no special skills to read this teacup.
We have Rissa Miller, and she's an editor, author, herbalist, seer, and storyteller. And we must explore more of this scene with the tea leaves and capnomancy. As if I know what that means. Obviously, it's smoke readings. Everyone knows that. Her storytelling and expertise stem from extensive research into the area of esoteric history, including ghosts, witchcraft, cryptids. We're going to have to talk a lot about that. That's really interesting. And folklore. And I love the title that you've got, a compassionate re-examination of ghosts. That gives me a really nice pitch on how you look at these things, and it shows your compassion as well. So Rissa believes the most enduring stories teach us not only humanity's past, but also gives reason to reflect on our own present beliefs and realities. And perhaps we can explore a bit the relationship between art and seeing, because you've got quite the talent and background with that too. But I'm going to stop talking and just say welcome to the show, Rissa. Yay.
Oh, thank you both for having me.
And I just want to add, you have the most beautiful hair.
Oh.
We've been in love with your hair.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, where do we start? We'd just love to know whatever you would like to share about your...
No, you wisely started with the hair, Xavier. If you can just talk about maybe...
Why do you have such beautiful hair?
After that introduction, let's just start
with...
where did you get your haircuts? And
I would be glad to tell you the story of my hair. So you can't see because I'm seated, but my hair actually comes all the way to my waist.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
Yeah. And I guess it was probably about 15 years ago when I was in this sort of emotional tangle with my hair, so to speak.
Wow.
I was really frustrated with the idea that I had to keep dyeing it. I didn't want to keep coloring my hair. Partially because it hurt my scalp, partially because it was really expensive, and partially because it felt really inauthentic to who I was. And, at that time, 15 years ago, it was not socially acceptable, at least not here in the United States, for aging women not to dye their hair.
I know,
it just
right?
wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
It was totally socially acceptable for men. And in fact, it was smiled upon. We have celebrities who are aging men. Yeah, they're distinguished, they're classy, they're intelligent and wise. But if a woman's hair is gray or silver, she's sort of washed up, she's lost her value. And I decided to kind of fly in the face of that and stop. I just stopped.
See, I told you, Michael. I said, when I saw your pictures, when we first came, I said, oh my God, hashtag hair goals. I love her hair so much. And I've always said, when I get to 50 was my goal, because I'd color my hair now and I'm 41 and I always put colors in. But I said, I'm going to stop dyeing my hair and embrace the gray or silver or whatever the heck it is. And I want to grow it really long. And so I was just like, oh, her hair is like...
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Love
it. I've even had sociologists from universities stop me and interview me because they were so blown away that as a woman, I didn't dye my hair.
Wow.
So I also think it's important to say I got my first gray at 17.
Oh, okay.
And I started struggling with it even then. I remember seeing that and being devastated, thinking nobody can know. This is like a dirty secret.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It was silly. That it's just part of biology. And I actually love the gray now. And as it grew in, I have this.
You got this cool streak. I can see.
Cool streak. Yeah.
If you're listening, they can't see how cool your hair is. Go see her on her YouTube so you can. It's stunning, and that's really empowering for women. So I'm really glad you did share that story and that I brought it up because, it's awesome. So hopefully you inspire some other women to just embrace their, not be ashamed of it.
I actually think it's really pretty. It actually glitters in the sun, and
Yes.
it gives lots of, like, I would normally have had highlights and lowlights dyed into my hair for a lot of money, and now that's natural. So if I'm
Mhm.
wearing my hair curly, it has a nice shimmer, it has texture, and I was just like, this is a great deal.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, it's like, just let it
Hairdressers would
go.
hate
It's
you.
a great deal.
Right. Awesome.
Mhm.
It's amazing also like how people wear themselves, right? And how
Yes.
they wear their bodysuit. And when it's with confidence and when it's with love, it just shines no matter
Yes,
what it is.
exactly.
Yeah.
Even if it kind of makes everything beautiful too. Like it is, your hair is absolutely beautiful, but you're already shining anyway.
Yeah, with confidence and self-love, which is really nice. So
Yeah, and
Thank you.
obviously you've worked on what was in your bio was like 5 different publications and as an editor as well. So stories are a big part of your life,
Mhm.
obviously. Is this like some kind of fractal thing of how it works with stories on paper, but also stories within people as to that kind
That
of
that's a really great way to start that. Okay,
okay.
so I think that everything I do comes back to storytelling. And I mean, there were even pieces missing from that bio. I spent 10 years as a professional dancer.
I
And
saw that.
that is,
Wow.
yes,
Yeah.
that is also storytelling. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just a different medium. I
Yeah.
think that as humans, storytelling is part of the human experience. And whether we're doing that through a written word, the way you might immediately think, or the spoken word, which is the way most stories are communicated,
Mm.
or through photography or art or food. I mean, food definitely tells stories of whole cultures. I think that
Mm.
all of these are ways that we have a collective consciousness, a memory of who we were, and that we pass on who we are to future generations. All of these things tied together.
Mm. So not just looking up of what you've been made up of, but what are you contributing to the ongoing story?
Right. Your
Wow.
experience. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Um, and with those stories, um, telling stories and being able to see. So with some of your readings, I know you've said that you've done some art pieces to go with it.
Yes.
And I loved the saying that you had in there, which was patterns in chaos.
yes.
So it's almost like stories are playing out, but is the seeing side of things, is that where the story's playing out and you're kind of reading that story, you're seeing that story to deliver it? Like there seems to be a little bit of telling the story and then reading the story.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. I think they're related, but they are separate acts. So
Yes.
when you're talking a lot about how I learned to essentially do scrying,
Great. Yeah, go.
and yeah, in
Go for it.
any form that I do scrying, that's what you're talking about. Okay,
Mm,
so I learned how to do that as a kid, and not consciously thinking I was going to learn to be a diviner. My dad went to art school. He's still around, but he was an artist,
mhm.
and he used to play a game with me, and I highly recommend this game to any adult or child. We called it scribble art,
Okay.
and we would close our eyes and scribble all over a page and trade. And then within that mess, and it's always a mess, you
Yeah.
start to look for pictures or patterns or anything that makes sense to you. And we would color them in. We used to have a whole wall full of them. I wish I still had those now. But yeah, scribble art taught me how to see.
Mm,
And I have to say that once you learn the process of seeing patterns in chaos, you can translate it to any medium. That's how I do tea reading. That's how I do smoke reading. That's how I see signs and symbols in life in general. I I can look at chaos and see the pattern. That's helped me in art. It has definitely helped me as an editor, because some people's writing is absolutely chaos.
yes.
And I'm not even trying to make a joke. It's sometimes it's a mess.
Yes.
But all of that said, whenever you can see what makes sense in the mess, in the haze, you have the ability to translate it.
Mm.
Wow.
I have some of my tea drawings here. I don't know how well they'll translate across the screen.
Okay. Oh, yeah,
But,
yeah, we can see. Yeah. Okay.
But that's what I would see in a teacup.
Wow.
And I would translate it into a pen and ink. I don't know. I'll try this with
okay. I love that. It looks like it's got the handle.
Wow. Okay. So you're getting like little micro pictures within the whole kind of mess. I can see it's almost like there's symbols that you're drawing from
shapes or animals, and so does some of them connect together? Like
absolutely. Oh yes.
Stories? Yeah.
So there are groupings within a teacup, and then there are individual things that stand alone, and I read them that way as well. If they're grouped together, I explain them as a group, and if they are a lonely horse or whatever, I explain that horse by itself.
We love interviewing experts from different fields about all things outside the apparent physical realm.
And the one constant is these phenomena are transmitted through energy.
So we sought out and teamed up with Subtle Energy Science
to bring you, our listeners,
energetic encoded technology you can use on your phone, laptop, computer, or tablet,
turning your device into a powerful personal quantum energy tool. Now, we're not the creators, or are we qualified enough to explain it at all, but there is a mind-blowing number of scientific studies available on their website.
We get to try the range ourselves so we can give an honest review. And until the end of April, we've got 20% off The Mystic with promo code MATP-861.
And I love using The Mystic. I love it more than anything else. And I notice it really helps if you want to open up your heart or tune in to a deeper awareness.
Now back to the show.
And the second part of learning to do divination was a symbol language.
Yes.
And finding that language did take longer than learning to see for me. I started when I was probably about 16 by accident, honestly. Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and that's on, for those who aren't as familiar, it's on the East Coast of the United States. And my mom gave me a loose tea and a tea ball. A tea ball is like a metal thing that holds tea that you can use over and over. Well, it was a total piece of crap, and it broke the first time I used it. So yeah, it was a waste of, the tea was amazing, but the tea was so special to me because loose tea wasn't common then. It just was a really special gift. I kind of wanted to just drink the tea anyway. So even with the leaves floating around in my cup, I drank it, and I saw it starting to stick to the sides. I had never heard of tea leaf reading. This was over 30 years ago. And I remember saying, this looks like a cat. And my mom saying, that's a kind of divination. If you're seeing it, you should go with it. So I started keeping a notebook of what I saw, and I would roughly sketch out the pictures, and eventually I started assigning meaning to them.
I was going to ask that. So how did you assign meaning to the pictures? Like
I intuited it. My symbol language is truly my own. I completely invented it as I went, and I've changed it over time, and I've added to it. I mean, in college, I took folklore classes and art history and literature, and I pulled from those common symbols. I have added, Native American symbols and Asian symbols and things that, as they come up in my reading, I learn them and I add them to the expanded repertoire that I have now all these decades later. And I use the same language in smoke. Where it gets tricky is when there are completely personal symbols in a reading. So I'm gonna give you an example. Do you all have Sasquatch there? The Bigfoot?
Yeah.
Well, we got drop bears.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
But we know of Bigfoot.
Yes.
Excellent.
Apparently we do somewhere, maybe.
Yes. I thought that every continent had a similar creature.
Something.
So in a cup, I saw one of these Bigfoot creatures with a guitar. And I thought, I must be seeing this wrong. This is not right. I'm going to make myself into a total fool if I say this to this woman. But I was like, no, I'm going to trust myself. I'm going to go with it.
Good.
And I did. And it turns out that her boyfriend was in a band, and they like to dress up like these creatures and play their instruments. So I was right. I just could never have guessed.
Wow.
That's how somebody would show up.
That's a lesson in trust when for people listening or watching, like talk about this all the time, just
Yes.
saying it because it might not make sense to you. We're not supposed to analyze what we're
Yeah.
seeing or getting. It might make more sense to them, and if it doesn't, that's okay as well.
Right.
Just say it, because then more will come because you're
Mhm.
out.
Well, I think that was honestly, for me, the hardest lesson in all of my divination practice was learning to trust myself.
Mhm.
I had been given a million reasons in life not to, from society, from people who've come and gone from my life, who just made me think, oh, maybe I'm not smart enough, maybe I'm not this enough, maybe I don't actually see things this way, or maybe it's all not real.
Yeah.
And
Imagining.
yeah, exactly. And then I finally one day was like, this has always been part of me. It's been part of me my whole life. I'm going to do this, and to hell with what they think. And life has been way better ever since then.
Funny that.
I'd like to comment on, so you were saying how you said that you assigned your own meanings to all the pictures and stuff. I think that's really important, because so many people feel like, oh, if I'm going to learn tea leaf reading, there's rules and I have to go look up, Google or in a book what those symbols
No.
mean. But they're different for everybody. So I know when I channel, I might get shown a scene from a movie or something from my own life. So I understand what I'm seeing, and they show me an example of maybe someone else and doing something. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's like that. And so they're just showing me in a way that I understand. And so that's what's happening for you. And that's really important for people learning to understand that it's so we know what it means and we can
Exactly.
so that's why you're able to add on things as your knowledge grows and you educate yourself and your brain's expanding and you're learning more symbols and things. And so you've got a broader repertoire with all your experience. And so you know exactly what it's meant to mean for the client, and the universe, or whatever you call that channeling, knows that you know that. So that's why they're showing it like that, which is great.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. I agree. I have talked to other tea leaf readers, actually.
Yeah.
And we all read very differently, but we come up with the same end answer.
Wow.
Cool.
Yeah. And it is a fascinating process to realize that we could all look at the same cup, see something different, but come up with the same reading.
Yes.
And yeah, I think that's, and there is this, particularly with tea leaf reading, there's this idea that it has to be complicated. Well, you have to learn to turn a cup. That's probably what I think is the hardest part. But then after that, you have to learn to trust your intuition. So I actually have a cup here I'm drinking, and if you want, I'll show you how I turn mine.
Oh,
But
no,
not every, I don't actually know anybody else who does the drawings like I do.
No, I've never
heard of it.
That's just my personal thing I like to do. And in my smoke readings, I do drawings with the soot as well. So that is yet another, I guess I'm always an artist, but I like to give people something to walk away with. I feel like, I know when I've had readings myself, I will walk away with maybe 1/3 of the information retained in my brain.
Yes.
And then I'm like, dang it, what did that person say to me about this? And they almost never remember. And I get that, because I don't either.
Yeah.
So that's why having this is that guide map. There it is. It's all written out. And I usually will create a calendar timestamp across the cup for them, saying like, look for this here, look for this here, look for this here. And so for me, a tea leaf or smoke reading runs a course of about 6 months.
Right.
Some people run, top to bottom in their drawing in 4 months. Some take more like 8 or 9, but generally about 6 months to go through everything that is shown.
So can I, just while we're on that, do you have to have the cup? Does it have to have a handle? Because that actually gives you where something starts. How do you know what's top and bottom if there's no handle on the cup?
All right, I'll explain my reading process.
Okay.
So normally, if there's a handle, I start there. And I use that as the representation of where that person is in their life right now. But if they're holding it from underneath, like a Japanese teacup, for example, I start at the bottom and come up instead.
Okay.
Ooh. So anywhere
So
on the back.
instead of going across like this, I come up like that.
Wow.
But that's
okay.
a great question.
Okay.
And yes,
That's
I've
really
definitely run into it.
clever. Okay. Cool.
And so when you're doing I know you can do this for people online, so they don't actually have to, they're not holding their own teacup and then you're trying to look in it. Like I'm assuming because energy goes everywhere. So I'm assuming you're drinking it with intention and with them in mind while you're talking to them, or is it beforehand?
Actually, I have people drink their own tea
You
and
do?
send me I do.
Cool.
I developed the system during the pandemic, and back in 2020, I had lots of residencies. I was doing readings on all these different cafes and antique stores, and suddenly that came to a winding stop.
That's cool.
And I honestly couldn't initially think of a way to read tea leaves until a woman from China contacted me. And she said, I must have a reading. And I said, well, I don't know how I can read for you. You're in China.
Yeah.
And she sent me photographs of her cup from all these different angles. They were in focus, they were well lit, and I saw the cup right away. I was like, oh, everything's here.
Yeah.
And I actually liked it better because I can take Photoshop and zoom in.
Yes.
Oh, of course. That'd be
And in real life I can't do that. When I'm reading in person, I do have a magnifying glass, like Sherlock Holmes.
cool.
But I have to admit, it is wonderful. I can throw those pictures right into Photoshop and see things at 400%. I don't miss a single detail in a cup when I'm doing them remotely. Yeah. So after she sent me her pictures, I was like, I could do this for anybody.
So you can
And
instructions of the type of tea leaves to use and how to swirl, do your swirling technique, and then
I made a video and I posted it, and I'm actually on the second generation of that video now of how to pick a cup, how to pick your tea, how to take your pictures, and how to send it.
Awesome. Well, I'm really deciding to book in so I can mention it. Too. That's really cool.
So I'm interested in and we're going to get to you talking about turning the cup and how you do it as well, because I'm so intrigued. With your hieroglyphs that you've made up, Rissa's book of hieroglyphics, if you had that, say, hidden away in a box, make it really mysterious, put it next to a coffin or something, so when someone finds it, it's even more mysterious, right? And they find your hieroglyphs on how to read a teacup. If they learnt that, would that be useful for them in reading tea leaves, or is there a process where it really has to be your own interpretation?
It could go either way. I know there are people, it's kind of like, take something that has basics. The symbols have meanings, like say a deck of tarot cards.
Yes.
So I'm a third generation tarot reader, and I learned those a long time ago. In fact, I would even go so far as to say there was a period in my life where I sort of revolted against them because I was like, oh, my mom did this, my grandmother did this, I'm not gonna. That said, I have learned to love them now, but I don't stick to, this has to mean this. Like when you turn the tower, it has to mean your life is coming to a hard end and everything is going to fall and it's awful. I don't always read the tower that way, not anymore. I literally will look at it in relationship to the other cards, and again, I will trust that inner feeling, that thing that I can't explain. We'll call it my intuition. I trust that, and I trust that I am being guided to say what the tower means for that person at this time, not necessarily what is in a book that defines the tower. And I think that it is the same with any set of symbols, which the tarot is a set of symbols, right? So if you pick up a book about tea leaf reading and the symbols work for you, go with it. If you pick up a book about mirror scrying and the symbols work for you, go with it. And if they don't, set them aside and work on your own, or think of something that makes more sense to you personally.
So I can hear skeptics going, well, that's convenient. I can just make a whole lot of shit up.
Yes. And where's that coming from then? So,
exactly.
But what you're trying to say then is that, or perhaps, correct me if I'm wrong, but the symbols have an importance, but what you're getting from your reading those symbols for that person is more important than what those symbols mean, because that's coming from somewhere else. So that's like the connection with you and that person that's more
Correct.
important than the symbols themselves.
Correct.
Okay.
That's a great way to say that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Sorry, we're getting back to how you actually do it. Okay. I'm sidetracking, which
She
makes
might
it...
not be ready to do that.
I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
quite
Yeah,
there
no,
yet.
don't
Like,
skull. Is this one
almost.
of those things? If the session's taking too long, you tell the person to skull there.
Skull the tea. Well, she doesn't have to if it's online now. It's
This
like
is true.
send it when they're ready.
This is true. Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to force them to drink the tea.
You know, I've had people sit down when I'm in person with them and they immediately want to gulp down their tea. I'm like, you can enjoy your tea.
Is that an
You don't
important
have
part of
to.
the process as well? Because I know, like you're talking about the Chinese woman that contacted you to get her reading. I know a lot of the Zen meditation that I've worked through over the years and learned, and I'm really not specifically Zen, but there's some really beautiful, amazing parts of Zen where you're very present with what you're doing. And tea is is like the ultimate way of making the tea and pouring it and being mindful through it, and then the drinking as well. Is there some connection with how you've even gone to make the tea and taking the tea as to how clear or important the message is?
I think that taking time with drinking the tea is an ideal scenario. I can't force people to do that.
No.
And I actually get seekers who come to me who want to do this, but they don't normally drink tea. And it's almost a struggle for them. I also get a lot of young people that are fans of the Harry Potter series.
Okay.
And in that movie and book series, there is a character named Professor Trelawney who does tea leaf reading. So because of that, I'll get, 13 or 14-year-olds who want to try this and they've never had hot tea and they're surprised with how bitter it is, or just in general, the experience is not what they expect. And there are moments where I think, are they going to make it through the whole cup?
So you can't just tip it out either. You have to consume the tea.
There's an old Scottish tradition called throwing cups, where they would take it and toss it and then read what was left. I don't do it that way. I find that too much of the tea gets lost, and there's always a streak where it gets thrown.
Yeah.
So there's always that edge of the cup where the tea got tossed out. I have tried it because I know there are some people that really do not take pleasure in drinking tea. And I do. I love tea. I love its nuance. I love all the varieties of tea. I do prefer reading black tea just because, for the practical reason that it's easier to see in a cup.
Yeah, I've got some chunky teas that it might be like a bit harder to see the pictures.
Yeah, I mean, there's some beautiful herbal teas that are so pale. Chamomile, for example. It's a lovely tea. It's a great soothing tea to drink at night, but you can't see it on a white cup.
Yeah.
It's white and yellow flowers. That's just not going to be a go. So that said, not everybody loves black tea. So it's not a pleasurable experience for them to sip a hot cup of black tea, and they will just drink it as fast as possible and get it done. But I do think, to answer your original question, that being present when you drink it, thinking about what you're looking for, or what you're not looking for, I guess, as well. And putting some of yourself into the cup is a part of the process. I think it can happen unknowingly, like the way people can leave their energy imprints everywhere without paying a bit of attention to it. That's also definitely a thing, and that will happen in a cup. But I mean, I've had people's secrets revealed that they weren't expecting, and it's like, well, actually, it's right here in your cup. I don't know anything about you. But it's interesting how energy will transmit. Sometimes what you need to hear isn't what you're looking for.
Exactly.
Like most readers, I get a lot of questions about love and money in different forms. I mean, the love can be romantic, or it could be about children, or other family members, and the money stuff could be about education, jobs, whatever. But often in front of that or just under it is some other thing, some unhealed pain, some trauma, some toxic situation that is just the block that is stopping the thing they really want. And I see that a lot. And the cups are, it's easy to see in a cup when that's there, because it literally looks like a big, it looks like a big block. Let me see if I can find one. Here's one right here. You see
Yep.
this big chunk right here,
Yes.
blocking this stuff from coming in? There it is.
Yeah.
This-
So
It's
you know what I was just
super
thinking,
easy.
the saying at the moment is like, come on, spill the tea. So they might not want to spill the tea, but yeah, acts like their higher self knows that they're supposed to get it out at the moment, and you're supposed to be able to help
Right.
them. Otherwise, it wouldn't come up in the cup in the first place. So I'm a big believer in, if I wasn't meant to know, it wouldn't show me. Or
Well, I always tell people at the beginning, I will take your questions and I will try to address them. But if
Yeah.
that's not what you need to hear right now, that's
Yes.
not what's going to come out.
Exactly. They might come for a certain reason, but you get, like you said, you dig in deeper, and more might come out. And so you got to.
Mhm.
It's just like
Absolutely.
a coach does, or a hypnotherapist. Like it's all, you come for what they say, what they think they want, but there might be some deeper issues that are causing that problem. There's a lot more digging. It's not just surface area fluffy stuff. You're doing real work here and helping you with real stuff.
To circle back to what we started with when you were talking about how my hair is an empowering thing, not only empowering for me, but I like to present people with readings that make them able to take power in their own life. Now, I can't control what comes through the reading, but I can control how I deliver it and what I offer in terms of how I explain what's there. And I want people to walk away. And I'm trying to think about individual situations where I can tell you. Oh, I had a woman come to me and she kept saying how everything in her life was stuck. She wasn't moving forward in her job. She wasn't moving forward in social life. All she did was sit at home with her cat. And the cup turned. I don't have this drawing. I gave it to the client. And the word MOVE was spelled out in it.
Wow.
You needed no special skills to read this teacup.
Whoa.
It literally MOVE. And I turned it and showed it to her, and I was like, "So what do you think?"
Yeah, it's like, victim or warrior. You're gonna move, or you're just gonna keep saying you're stuck. Like,
Exactly.
How did she go? Was she freaked out?
She was really shocked. She stared at it for a minute. She goes, "Does this happen all the time?" I was like, "Words are very rare." I was like, "I might get a number sequence or maybe one letter in a cup, but not a word." I think a full word like that has happened in all of these years, maybe 3 times.
Wow.
So, and it was not tiny. It was big. I mean,
Oh
it
my
spanned
God.
most of the rim of the cup. I mean, there were a couple of other little symbols around it, and I was able to read those for her. But the takeaway was that she was her own worst enemy. She needed to get off of her sofa
yes.
and take action instead of sitting there waiting for things to turn around for her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Well, I read this book about manifesting." I was like, "Great, that's step 1. Fantastic." I was like, "Now you need to take action."
Yes, to do
I was
it.
like,
Just read about it.
"Yes."
People,
I was like, "Yes."
spiritual
I was
bypassing,
like,
waiting for the universe to do things for them, and then just going to stay at home. And is my pizza delivery guy going to be a big match? I have to leave the
yeah,
house.
I have definitely heard people asking me questions like that. And I'm like, I can't predict who your pizza guy is. However, my
Oh.
guess is that it's a no. I was
Yeah.
like, "P.S., I'll be looking at a professional woman who thinks, this professional man's going to just show up at her door." I was like, "Who? The guy who is like delivering your carry out? Is that who you're looking for?" It's like, that's not who you tell me you're looking for, if that's what you're waiting for. I was
Yeah.
like, the guy who's actually like a lawyer is not going to show up at your door. I was
Yeah.
like, "You're going to have to go out and get out in the world and do things that you love."
Mhm.
And I think
And
that,
fall in love with the plumber anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
That's how the world
You're more
works.
Exactly.
likely to if you're on the right vibration.
Yeah.
Doing things you
I
enjoy.
mean, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. If they're right for each other and they're happy, I'm all for it. I
Mhm.
mean, we could use more of that in the world, right? But goodness, yeah, that was probably the easiest cup I've ever read in my life. So
It's interesting that people, so you look at maybe the concept of someone that's stuck at home and really wants to do something, and you could look at very practical steps of what they need to do that they would already know, but
mhm,
instead they went and got a teacup reading for their future.
mhm.
Right. And then other things like, oh, I've got a book on manifesting. Do you know what I mean? It's that same kind of theme of how can I get it done for me? And I love that often from the spirit world or the other side, messages are often very, very subtle so that you can go on a journey. And then there's other times where they're screaming. And I feel like a cup that says move was like, there's going to be
Yes,
this nice little teacup reading, and literally they've just gone, move. Like it couldn't get
Yeah.
any clearer.
Yep.
Unless it said get off your ass, you know, like
Yes.
exactly.
and then maybe they wouldn't have believed that it was a real reading. Then it's like, wow, this
Right.
Rissa lady's writing stuff into
Yeah, and it's like sticking to the cup or something. Like she would have got
magnets
so
or
many,
something.
she would have got so many subtle hints over time, and then
Yes.
people, they're just not getting it. So yeah, our lessons are to notice the little things and be more in touch and in tune. And if we don't get that, you get a big kick up the ass.
So
Yes.
So something more obvious because she's just not getting it, and the higher self's like, "Can you please?" Like, I just see that symbol of
sounds
what
frustrating,
guardian angel
probably.
like this. I've seen that as a meme, like when they're frustrated because they're not listening.
I
Yeah.
think I've seen the same, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. That's it. You know,
Yeah,
I thought to myself, like, what led her here? She
yeah.
knows that the answer is not on her sofa,
Yeah.
you know? But yeah, so I mean, there have been symbols and teacups that were so easy to read
Yeah.
that you needed literally zero special skill to do that. You know, nothing esoteric about it.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So my cup is ready.
Oh,
I'm going to I'm
um,
going to try to back up a little bit
yeah,
so I have
good.
some more stuff.
I love that you have drawings as well, because I feel like it is like the ultimate for someone that reads teacups to have case notes. It's amazing. If you photocopied them and had files, it might even be brought up in a
Oh.
courtroom somewhere where they go, oh, we're going to have to subpoena your case notes from your tea readings. And it's like, well, it was actually in the future.
You know, I did read a teacup once for some very questionable individual who asked me if the police were going to find him.
Ah, yes.
Shredder.
Yeah. Let's go back to the cup. So,
Oh,
Okay.
so I
Can you
drank this
explain
cup.
what's happening too for the people that are just listening and aren't on YouTube?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I drank this. This is an old-fashioned teacup. Most of my teacups are vintage. They are the old kind English style teacup with a handle and a shallow bowl. These are not mugs. Mugs, unfortunately, don't work. Um,
Oh, okay.
I wish they did because I do love a big cup of tea. But this is what I use for the teacup readings.
Mhm.
So from here, the loose tea is in there, and
Mhm.
there's probably still about a tablespoon of water. And I take the saucer and I'm going to invert it upside down. I do have a napkin in between, and I put it on there like a hat, like this.
Mhm.
Now, I grasp firmly. I always tell people, believe me when I say grasp firmly. And then you swish the cup around. Over the years, I've decided that people should move the cup in a way that feels authentic to them.
yes.
I have a tea leaf reader friend who says everybody has to make 9 right turns. If that works for her, that's great.
Yes.
Not every I have definitely had seekers come to me who had like bad shoulders or bad backs, and they couldn't make a big motion like this, and like up and down was better for them. And I'm like, you know what? Do that. Do you?
Still your
And
educated.
so yeah, I don't have any rules except you have to move the cup to get the tea on the sides, and it has to feel right to you. And when it feels done, we'll flip it. So I'm gonna sort of lean back and turn the cup for you. Like this.
Just doing big swirls and then flip.
Oh,
It is important to flip it very quickly because if you take too much time, the tea sinks back.
Mm.
And I'm going to show now. I read from the cup. Some tasseographers read from the saucer. With coffee reading, it is very traditional to read from the saucer. That's like through Turkey, areas like that. They often will read from the saucer.
Okay.
But with tea, it's usually inside the cup. Here's what it looks like.
Oh, wow. Okay. Looks like grass clippings have kind of flipped out into the cup.
Yeah, most people tell me, well, that looks like a mess, but not to
Yes.
me.
Okay. Amazing.
I see somebody rowing a boat right out of the gate. I see a pair of glasses. I see the number 6. There's all kinds of stuff that pops right out to me
So
in this cup.
quickly.
Yeah.
But like, because there's a big shot, like there's a whole, like there's an initial kind of picture is like there's a big lot of tea leaves, and you can see like
You see the eyeglasses?
bigger picture.
You gotta see that.
Oh,
You
okay.
gotta
Yes,
see
I
the
can see
eyeglasses.
eyeglasses.
Oh wow,
there.
yeah.
Yes.
And then you
Okay.
can see smaller things within the tiny little flecks as well as other pictures,
Right.
not just the big chunks of the tea. So there's like a couple of
Right.
layers. Right.
Exactly. And that's how I find the groupings. And that's what makes the Photoshop part so helpful, is
Ooh.
that you can zoom in to find those little pieces from
Yeah.
a picture of this versus the naked eye, which you just can't see as much without that aid.
Yeah,
So
I've tried doing this, and it because I'm more of a claircognizant, or just pops in my head. So I'll look at pictures or I see stuff, but instead I just start channeling them just because I'm holding the energy of the cup without looking at the pictures and figuring out the symbols. I kind of like, I can't, I don't need to see it. It's just different. I've tried to do it. I'm like, okay, that's not my thing. I'm just going to channel them by holding the cup.
And, like I said, what comes through needs to come through however it works.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was preparing for a day of tea leaf readings at a gift shop, and clear as day, in this office where I'm sitting right now, I looked in and saw a young man who wasn't really there, in a ball cap with a particular t-shirt on, sitting and looking out the window in a chair that is not in my office.
Okay.
I do not consider myself a medium, but every now and then, and I think it's because I've worked in the ghost industry so
Yes.
long, these things filter through.
Yes.
And I think they know that I'm open as well. So I got to the reading, and my first reading, I knew immediately that this woman knew him. I started to describe the young man. I said, do you know a young man who was like a fan of a particular sports team, who wore a ball cap? He was about, 6 feet tall. And she said, my son just passed. You're describing him.
Oh,
And it was nothing to do with her tea leaf reading. I did a tea leaf reading for her, but that was the message.
Yeah.
And she showed me his picture. It was the same man I saw. And that's why she was there. It was nothing to do with what came through later in the teacup. She could barely even focus on her teacup. And that's kind of what showed up, was that since his passing, she was raising a grandchild that, was his son. There had been a terrible accident. And she was so confused about how to go forward. Of course, that showed up in the cup, but the main message was that he was still with her, and that he was okay on the other side, which is all I've really ever found, at least so far, that they're okay and they're still there.
Yeah.
And so that was a first for me when that happened. And there have been other incidents like that since. I can't promise people that it's going to happen, so I don't advertise myself that way.
Yeah.
But I've had other people and animals actually come through in that way during readings that were nothing to do with the cup, but somehow I either saw them in the room or I knew what they wanted to say. So I think that's exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, it's in your head. Like it's in there. Like I don't see them with my physical eyes. I just kind of know they're there and can describe what's happening and what they're doing, but it's in my head.
Interesting. What came up to me at the start of that, and not through any kind of seeing, just to my mind, was the saying, when you stare into the abyss, soon enough the abyss will start to stare back. But that was
Yes.
used as a way for me growing up in a very Christian household, was around more fear of don't do things like scrying because it's bad and it lets the bad things out. And that forces people to not do it. Okay. But it's interesting. And that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just that's used as a fear way to stop people from doing certain things. Maybe because it's real and it works. Who knows? But what effects, that's interesting. What effects do you think you've had on you, or that you've noticed on you, since you've been doing more of these readings? And we haven't even touched on the other amazing stuff that you've been seeing or researching or looking through. But what sort of effects have there been on you? Like, obviously being able to see that boy in the room is quite, that's not something you've worked on. It's just happened as part of your intuition. What else has kind of developed in yourself just from the art of seeing and being open to that?
I have a lot more peace.
Huh.
I feel a lot more peace within myself.
Mm.
I do feel more interconnectedness. It is sad to say, especially in the United States right now, interconnectedness is not a popular vibe. And I see a lot around me of the exact opposite of peace happening in my world. Even in the small town where I grew up, where my parents still live, there was an active shooter just a few days ago.
Oh, God. Yeah.
And nobody was hurt. They caught him. He fired 20 shots and didn't hit any people, which is wonderful for the people. But I can feel the world almost like pulling away from its spirit. And I feel like the more readings I do, the more I interact with the ghosts on my tours, the more I connect to this other world. Actually, the phrase I use a lot is other world. And I don't think of it as separate. I think of it as overlaying.
Yes.
And yes, I'm almost sure that I'm not alone in this room, even though I'm physically alone in this room. I feel like one of the gifts and curses of it is seeing how people are pulling away from themselves. They're pulling away from their own peace. They're pulling away from their own happiness. And I don't understand why. I wish I could explain it, because then I could offer solutions. But I don't know the answer to that. But I can definitely feel it, especially the closer I become to feeling peace within the flow.
That might be the reason why I feel that quite often. The amount of times I've said, if like I've been to funerals, and I actually enjoy funerals now, because no one ever misses their own funeral, because there's so much intention and love in the one space. How could they not be pulled into that space? And it's beautiful. And I think, gosh, if everyone in his room could see what I could see and feel now, the world would just be a happier place. They wouldn't fear death. They wouldn't be so distraught. You'd be more at peace. And so that could be the reason why. So the more people who learn to grow and improve their intuition and connect with themselves, you don't all have to be psychics. So this is why I teach it. And it's so beautiful. Like, the more people that do this, the more you'll understand, and maybe it will help people be more at peace. And
I love that. I'm with you.
Good. Let's show more people how, what it can be like.
And I think, go.
I wanted to circle back to something you said. You were talking about how you grew up in a very Christian household.
Yeah.
And one of my personal great missions is to, this is going to sound funny considering what I do, is to dispel superstitions.
Awesome.
I like that.
I am haunted personally by superstitions, by things like saying, oh, the tarot card can conjure the devil.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, if you really want to conjure something dark, you don't need tarot cards. All you need is your intention. Tarot card is a piece of paper.
I feel like, sisters.
Right? People always like, oh, won't the tarot card invoke the devil? And I've actually outright laughed. I'm like, this is a stack of paper.
Yes.
you know?
Stop giving
So
it
it's a-
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More likely if
giving
you
it-
say that, you're attracting that. It's like,
Yeah.
stop.
Right. And I said, anything can do harm in the hands of somebody with bad intentions. It doesn't have to be a tarot deck or a scrying mirror or anything like that. Like if you want to do bad, you will do bad with or without those tools.
Yes.
And I don't understand so many I do a talk on the history of superstition, and the
Right.
reason I put it together was to throw water on that fire.
Yeah.
And even if I give it to a small group of 10 people, I'm going to give it with all my heart, because those 10 people can go out and no longer be afraid of black cats. Those people
Yeah.
can go out and no longer, suddenly feel as though it's against God's will if they knock on wood for luck.
Yes.
I want them to
Yeah.
feel safe in the world, that a fan isn't going to steal their soul. So all of these super, do you not know that one?
I don't know that one.
Ah,
I've got a fan on at the moment.
oh,
Is
well, if you
bad?
sleep, the superstition is Asian, and if you sleep with an electric fan running, it will blow your soul away while you sleep,
Oh,
because the
okay.
soul leaves the body to walk at night. And if you
Ah.
have an electric fan on, it can't come
Can't
back.
come-
Our fans not that strong. And energy costs are really high. Even if there was a fan strong enough to push my soul around, I couldn't afford to run it all night, overnight anyway. You work a lot with looking at history of witches, and probably so Maryland and Pennsylvania, obviously the land which you're from and at.
Yes.
And there's a lot of history in the witches. Has that come through really with that dispelling the myths as well,
Yes.
as far as how they got it so obviously wrong back then, but we're not burning women, but we're still kind of doing the same thing, just not by, or are we burning women? I don't know. I haven't seen the news lately.
Well, it has been this side of 10 years that witches were burned in Haiti. So we're not that far
Okay.
away from
Wow.
it. So I'm sorry to be the one to break that bad news to
Yeah,
you.
that's not great.
But
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the world has not fully progressed from fear of witches, and I think it's incredibly sad. Thousands of men and women and even animals have been killed in the name of witchcraft, and in the United States, our history with witches is nothing to do with the native culture. The native culture believed in magic. They prized their medicine men and medicine women and shamans. They were revered elders in their society. So also when the Europeans came, they killed them too.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're like, naturally, yeah.
They're a threat.
So
Yeah.
exactly, yes. So it's interesting to note that witchcraft defined as a culture or belief in nature is the oldest faith to humankind, and it predates every other faith that has come and gone or that still exists to date. So to fight against the cycle of nature seems really silly to me, but I imagine humanity will do that as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the nature of humanity. I guess we have to learn the hard way. But yes, it is tragic when you look at the culture that was brought by Europeans to the United States. Salem, Massachusetts is the worst example. It was nightmarish what happened there in the course of 1 year. Over 100 people were imprisoned, 19 people were killed, 1 man, the rest women, and 2 dogs were hanged as witches. Now that's nothing compared to the thousands of cats that were killed in Europe. I mean, thousands of cats, which they might have regretted maybe when the Black Plague came.
Yes. Yeah. Hello. Yeah.
Just
Wow.
saying,
Karma.
maybe karma was at work for those cats. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that if there is indeed a greater power, an ultimate source, God or goddess, that they were saying, why did you kill all my cats?
Mm-hmm.
So
That's interesting. I've never put those two things together,
No.
and that is so
Yeah.
simple, and it makes so much sense. Wow.
the Catholic Church put a decree out and said you have to kill all the cats because they're witches in disguise or witches familiars, and that we need cats.
Yeah.
We need cats as a society, and they do a great service to humankind, and not to recognize that is very short-sighted, as you know, history has shown us. But yes, back to the United States. Maryland and Pennsylvania both have very different histories with witchcraft, but they both learned from Salem, and they didn't want that to happen again. Almost all of the other colonies didn't want Salem to happen, and they took great measures to make sure that it was not a thing. There were deaths associated with witchcraft in, well, almost every state that I could think of in those early days before the Revolution, the British and American Revolutionary War. But I can tell you for sure, nothing will ever compare to Salem. I hope. Let me rephrase that. I hope nothing will ever compare to what happened in Salem. And I don't know how much you know about American politics, but there's a strong right-wing movement here at the moment trying to take women's rights away fully, even the right to vote. And it's kind of shocking. I mean, they want to take it away from everyone who's not a white man. So it isn't just women, but people of color
That's
as
have blonde
well.
hair and blue eyes too, or like what?
No, I'll be all right, because we've done such a good job so far. Us white men at running the show. Yeah.
Oh, backwards, man. Seriously.
But yeah,
wow. So that's still prevalent now.
Unfortunately,
sense,
it is kind of on the rise.
That's strange.
So all I could do is hope for the best with that, but hope that their voices get drowned out by the majority.
Yes.
Which is, a lot of people. And that said, Maryland did execute one woman as a witch, but many others were killed by the public.
Yeah.
And in Pennsylvania was founded by Quakers, which was a religion that was also persecuted in Europe. And Quakers were like the most peaceful people. I mean, it's still a practiced religion. It's just very small. They were very peaceful people. And I don't know why you'd have a problem with them ever, personally.
They're not on the path of the majority. Like anything that's different, people get scared.
Yeah, it's other. It's other. So when Quakers founded Pennsylvania, they did have a witch trial come up. And allegedly, a woman was asked, "Do you fly through the night on a broomstick?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, there's no law against it. You go ahead." And that kind of became, Pennsylvania's stance on witchcraft.
That is so funny.
Which is kind of lovely.
Yeah.
And there were no other prosecutions for witchcraft until the 1920s, when somebody actually killed a male witchcraft practitioner because they thought he had hexed them, but they broke into his house, beat him to death, lit his house on fire. And so that was an individual that was nothing to do with the government. But it made international news at the time because it was the 1920s and witches weren't real anymore.
Yeah.
Not real anymore. Yeah, they're just not getting busted.
Right. So the history of witchcraft is fascinating, and it is so loaded with superstition.
Speaking of superstition. Oh, there we go. Yes.
You're back here.
Right when you said superstition, you paused. That was great.
I said it's loaded with superstition and paranoia.
Oh, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'd like to kind of, we keep stringing things back, and it's because you're very good at this. It's what you do for a living on many fronts, not just editing. It's contagious, but looking at what you can do for people, that connectedness that you're talking about, the effect on yourself of having that connectedness and seeing other people less and less connected, and that it's a trend to kind of move away from that. It was really interesting. I was literally this morning during a meditation was reading something from an Indian sage, not too 100 years ago or something. But someone was asking him, how do I then connect away from my personhood and connect more to my truer self? and he said, just be amongst those that are wise.
Mhm.
And he said, so how do I know the difference between someone who is wise and who is just clever? And he said, go out there and you will know when you're around them. That's the easy part. The hard part is being able to trust them and take their guidance. And I thought that was a really interesting thing for me to read. And I don't normally remember, you know, a little passage bit that I read. But as you're talking, that just came up for me so much, that in your work, sitting there and being with them, not just saying this is how you read tea leaves, but you sit presently to read for them and their energy and being around them, and your connectedness, that transfers as it is them to be able to be more connected with something higher. So it's not just like spiritual bypassing, you know, I've got to get off the couch, I'll go see a, you know, someone that reads tea leaves, or, you know, book of man. It still finds its way by being around
Yes.
those people. And I get a lot of wisdom from yourself, and maybe not because you're necessarily a wise person, but you're connected to that wisdom. And that seems to really shine through. So I think you putting yourself in your work and in what you do and when you're with people is going to have an effect on those people just by being around you and
Yes.
and being with you. So we need more people like you in those areas. Raise that vibration and get people more connected.
True.
I absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we didn't even get into the smoke. The
Oh, yeah.
scrying with smoke. How is that? Is it similar that you're just looking for those symbols like you are in the tea leaves?
In the smoke, just like you can in the tea. Some of them are obvious, like that little heart. Some of them take me longer to look at. And when I do these drawings, I read the page 4 times. I turn it, and it actually changes each time, and it always tells a story. There's the storytelling aspect again. It always starts and ends a story.
Yeah.
Love
Wow. That's incredible. It's
So that
incredible
one-
that you can use that editing skills even in that scrying.
Yes.
Or it's
Yeah,
the other way
I
around.
don't. Yeah, it's there's not much more esoteric than smoke scrying, but it feels perfectly natural to me. And I've done a lot of research into the history of divination.
Mhm.
It is one of the mediums used at Delphi by the oracles there. So that's its kind of claim to fame. And it has kind of always been a way that like elders or wise people in native cultures would
Yes.
do divination. They
That's what I
would
was
look
thinking.
into
They're sitting there and looking at.
yes.
Like, yeah.
You would look at the fire and smoke, and you would see what was, or in the embers. That's also a way to use this.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Anytime you're near a fire, look, you'll see it. You'll
Mm.
definitely see it.
Yeah.
I love it. So we just have lots of different tools at our disposal to be able to connect with and read and get the messages, and then people will come depending on what resonates with them as well.
Right.
Some people that
Yes.
would be really interested. Yeah.
You know, I've got to tell you, almost all of my smoke clients are fire signs.
Okay.
They're almost always born under fire signs.
Wow. And how do you choose? They choose. They say, "Oh, I want a reading. I want a smoke reading, or I want a reading. I want a tea reading." So it's more you go by them.
Most people do. Most people choose what they want, and some
Yep.
people contact me and say, you know, I've only ever done tarot cards. Should I do that, or should I try one of the others? And you know, my answer is always ultimately it's up to you. But what questions do you have about tea or smoke that I can help with?
Mhm.
And a lot of times one will just sort of sing to somebody and they try it, and usually they love it. It's a very different divination experience than getting a tarot reading. Like I said, I don't stay necessarily in the lines when I do a tarot reading, but I stay more in my lane doing that than I do with tea and smoke, because there is no lane with tea and smoke. Everything is on the table.
Yeah. I think there's something in that when people talk about wisdom and really wise people, It's often when they have tools to share wisdom, the tools are just for them to get out of the way and help the person read what's there.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of with the tea and the smoke, it's just a way to get out of the way and just read what's in front of you rather than something coming from your own thoughts of what might be right for this person.
I have to share, I feel the two of you will appreciate this. I had a
Ah.
woman come to me and she said when she was growing up in the Caribbean that she went to a seer who used onions as her medium.
Oh,
And what she would do is cut the onion and throw it. So this was a casting system, right? She was casting. But she used her lack of being able to see through her tearing up as part of her way of seeing the pattern that the casting would create. So when you're talking about using something to get out of your own way as a seer, I can't think of a better example. Like you literally can't see.
Why can't you put a blindfold on? Why put yourself through that?
I don't know. That was her system. It was her way.
your
I didn't
senses, like-
personally experience it, but when I was told the story, I was kind of amazed. I thought to myself, well, I know it's not for me.
Maybe it's symbolizing the layers that we have of an onion, that,
well, there's
shred.
actually there's something in, and there's a few different things that have come up with kind of fluids. I don't want to sound rude, but like let's talk about in the head anyway. But fluids, like when people looking at certain healing techniques or being able to overcome pain, there's certain techniques you can use, but you have to have saliva in your mouth, and it tells your body that everything's okay. When your mouth is dry, it's normally that whole associated with anxiety, so it's like reverse gearing. But there's some kind of healing property with having saliva in the mouth, and the person doing the therapy has to have saliva in their mouth as well, even though it's got nothing to do anything, and you don't spit on each other.
So you're not scaring it.
Keeping the saliva in the mouth. And then the eyes water a little bit as well. So there's some kind of thing that I don't understand that has happened in certain healings where having kind of that flow of moisture, and we're all made up of water, is actually part of the contributing to whatever's happening on another level. So I wonder if the onion and the tears, it might actually be bringing something else on that I can't explain, but it's just interesting. Yeah, there's a few different techniques where there's that involved. So
it was definitely one of the most unique techniques I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
I mean, I recognized it as casting, but aside from that, I've never heard of using an onion, and I've never heard of purposely blinding yourself.
Yes.
And you're right. Why wouldn't you just blindfold?
Yeah.
Because I understand, like
There's
when
more
you
to it.
take a sense away, it lightens the other senses. That makes sense. So, but yes, we've got something to do with the onions. That's a thing, and that's cool. Maybe it's to do with fluid head flow.
Yeah, there's always more to it. There's always more to it. You look at things on the surface. It's like tea reading. Someone will go, "Oh, you saw an animal in the tea," like blah blah blah. It's like, and now we've learned, even just from today, just touching on the surface, it's like, wow, okay, there's a lot in this. There's a lot that can be shown and seen when done properly.
We'll have to have Rissa back another time because there's so many more things we wanted to talk about, and we spent so much time on that topic.
So you're so amazing. I think myself and a whole lot of other people are going to throw away their little loose tea leaf strainers.
Yes.
And
I
start
encourage
drinking tea. Have you got any hints on drinking the tea? This is actually a serious question.
The bits are floating up
because it drives me nuts. So how do you drink the tea when there's the tea leaves all floating around in there?
I might be used to it.
Okay.
But the other thing, picture how whales pull in the plankton and leave the rest of the fish out. I always use that analogy to explain when people are drinking with me. I have had people literally take this and drink all of the tea out, and I'm not gifted in that I can read what's in somebody's gut. That is not.
Don't swallow all the.
Yeah.
I always try to do it, just keep the lips kind of closed and then try not to get to any sort of like pick it up.
Don't eat it. Wow, you actually have to say don't eat it. Wow.
Yeah, don't eat the tea. So when I do it, I kind of drink through my teeth, which is not polite. And it is not dainty. And this English teacup is probably like
Yeah,
but
that's right.
yeah, that is how I do it. And the other thing is, when from an herbalist standpoint,
Yep.
when you drink your tea loose like this, the water is hitting more surface of the tea, and you're getting more of the antioxidants and other great botanicals out of the actual leaves. So
Wow.
it's better for you.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't hurt you, by the way, to eat tea leaves. They're actually incredibly good for you.
Yes.
They fight cancer. They're a great thing to swallow, actually.
Okay.
So I even throw the tea in broth and things like that, just to continue to get all the great health benefits from a science point of view,
Huh.
to get all the great health benefits out of the tea. So yeah, the tea being loose in the cup is more than just a tool for divination. It's a tool for great health.
Okay. Wow, that sounds like the tagline for the end of this, or a new podcast on drinking tea.
I've got a question about like tea, because I had a friend come visit from the United States. She came to my wedding and I took her to the supermarket, and she was fascinated by how much tea we had here in Australia. She goes, I would never buy tea bags off the shelf in America because I wouldn't trust that there's actually decent tea leaves in there. There's like sticks and things. It's not good quality tea. So she goes, I order loose leaf tea from other countries and get imported. So when she was here, she was trying different teas that we have here in Australia, and buying all these different flavors, because she tried some at my house and she's like, wow, there's actual real tea in those tea bags. Like, so she actually bought some. So yeah, do you have access for yourself? Like, she might be in a different part or shop somewhere different, but is that something that's common in America?
Yeah,
Like,
where do you get your tea?
Oh, well, it depends on what I'm doing with it. So I do like to buy fancy tea for drinking. There's only one tea plantation in the United States. So
Okay.
that said, it is in Charleston, South Carolina, and they do make excellent teas. Their tea leaves are fantastic. But other than that, all tea is imported, right?
Mhm.
And most tea in tea bags is a blend of some tea and some filler.
Yeah.
And I think that the availability of good tea has definitely gone up with the introduction of the internet. And
Yes.
yeah, so I feel like the world is available in the
Mm,
United States, and maybe not at our grocery store, but it is there.
mm.
And it's not that difficult to get great tea. There are lots of small tea rooms. It's
Beautiful.
definitely become more of a trend to see them. Now, we're talking probably in major cities.
Yeah.
Mm,
Not so much in small towns. You
mm.
occasionally cross paths with a tea room in a small town, but mostly
I like
in
the
your
idea of
major
a
cities,
tea
you'll
room.
find tea rooms.
That's very
Yeah.
cute. There's a lot of tea bags most tea bags are bleached as well. So you're drinking the chemicals
Yes.
and things that's not so loose
Yes.
with tea.
You
And
know, I just answered that question on my Instagram.
uh,
Somebody asked me what I do with my tea.
Right.
And I say, if I'm traveling or something, I have to throw it in the garbage. But if I'm at home, I throw it right in my garden. It's
yes.
great for the soil. It's full of nitrogen. It nourishes my other plants, nourishes my herbs and vegetables. But yeah, I always take my spent tea and toss it right back to the earth.
Right.
Good idea.
It's
Yeah,
cool.
that's awesome. Fantastic. And so on that, your Instagram, we'll have that link in the show notes. What's your Instagram?
It's tea and smoke _ by Rissa.
I love that. Tea
It's a
and
nice name.
Smoke by Rissa. I love that. I love that. Excellent. And also there's your website, and there's a whole lot of details there on how people can get in touch with you for
Mhm.
readings. And I mean, you've got a whole lot of stuff on there. We haven't even scratched the surface of.
Yeah.
And perhaps next time we need to get you back with that compassionate re-examination of ghosts.
Oh,
That
I would
sounds
love
like
to
a
come back.
title for a podcast. I love that.
Yeah, the two of you have been absolutely wonderful to talk to. I feel like I just
Oh,
met
thank
two
you.
friends.
Yeah.
Awesome. Us too. Like, yeah, it's really
Yeah.
nice. And yeah, we so many different things we could talk about. We could talk all day. So definitely love to have you back on again.
Yeah, that'll be good. Excellent. Well,
Thank you.
we have to let you go. Yes, Xavier, wrap it up. Do your spiel.
My spiel. I haven't planned my spiel.
I know. I like to
Thank
put her on
you.
the spot sometimes.
Yeah, we really appreciated that, and it was such a beautiful conversation. We know we learned so much, and I'd already know a tea reader and things, but you just like, everyone's so unique and different, and we just love the energy that you bring forward for your clients, because it's not about, people go to where they're drawn, and so the way you put things across is really important. So I think so many people would just love to be in your energy and space, especially for an empowered woman who embraces the gorgeous silver glitter in your hair, which is really, really nice. So you just be, it's just someone that's a really great energy to be around and to hear from, knowing that you know, you'll give authentic messages as well. So it's all about the style of how you deliver, as well as the skills that you have, and you're so knowledgeable as well with all the other things we're talking about in your bio. It's just fascinating. So please connect with Rissa. Anyone's listening who wants to go deep dive into her website and see all the other wonderful things that she does. I know I definitely want to book in for one of your tea leaf readings. I'm excited to try something different. So that'll be fun. We can have some one-on-one time.
I would love that.
Yeah, and everyone can enjoy their tea now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And try stuff out.
Yeah, and have some more intention when they're drinking their tea and think about it a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your wisdom and your time. We appreciate it. Thank you, Rissa.
Thank you both, and I wish you both all the best going forward.
Thank you. That's it for another episode. Thanks to our sponsor, Subtle Energy Sciences. Click the link in the show notes to access their full product range of quantum healing technology.
And thank you so much to our Patreon supporters. We're so grateful for your contribution to keep this podcast going.
If you'd like to join our Patreon, you can receive bonus full episodes, early release, and monthly readings and meditations.
We love to hear from you, so please comment on our YouTube channel or email us at mickandthepsychic@gmail.com.
I'm a certified hypnotherapist and timeline regression therapist. If you wish to contact me to explore the source of an issue you're facing, just book a session at hernhypnosis.com and include the promo code MATP for 10% off. You can contact me on Insta and Facebook at hernhypnosis.
Check out my website at optimisticxavier.com.au if you feel you'd like to connect with me as a psychic medium, spiritual mentor, or intuitive coach. Include the promo code MATP for 10% discount. You can also find me on Insta, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
We look forward to connecting with you again next time as we attempt to leave no stone unturned.
Bye.
All right, cool. I reckon that should be okay.